They're waging war on waste.
I really believe that being environmentally friendly will save you guys money.
The efficient series, Wasted, tonight on Australia Network.
Monday, plunge into a nest of fierce fire ants.
Each one of those stings feels like the touch of a hot needle.
And discover new species.
Look at that! Whoa, that is a big roach.
It's a hands-on approach.
Don't do this at home.
To the mystifying world of insects.
I cannot understand why most people don't study ants.
Ed Wilson is Lord of the Ants. Monday on Australia Network.
I'm William Young, and currently I describe myself as a photographer stroke performer. I've been a photographer for over 30 years, and in the late 80s I started to do slideshows in the theatre, and they became very popular, and so I kept doing them. And people from overseas have wanted my performance pieces rather than my exhibitions. And so they've been successful for me, and I've kept doing them, and now they're the main things that I do. When I first started taking photographs, I tried to photograph everything. And then I suppose after a while, this is a good while, I realised that there were certain themes running through my work, and I'd be better off just to concentrate on those themes. I'm a third-generation Australian-born Chinese, and I was brought up in the Western way, partly because my mother wanted me to assimilate into the mainstream, and it was partly cultural as well, because when I grew up in Australia in the 1950s, people wanted everyone, new Australians people were called, you were expected to assimilate and to speak English. So I grew up with the Chinese side unacknowledged and denied. I felt uncomfortable about being Chinese. And then I suppose I was in my mid-30s when I started to embrace my Chinese history, and I researched the Chinese in Australia, and the last part of this process was a visit to China in 1989. So that was the first time that I went to China, and it was something like a discovering my, discovering China, my origins. Although, strangely, I didn't really go to the place where my mother came from until later, but it was probably the most meaningful trip to China that I did. I've been to China 4 times altogether since 1989, and my most recent trip was in 2005, where I climbed some of the sacred mountains. And there are 9 sacred mountains in China, 4 Buddhist and 5 Taoist, and they're scattered all over China. And so that was something of a pilgrimage, and also an interesting thing to do, because not very many people have climbed them. And it's not like climbing a mountain in Tasmania, for example, because there are steps and paths up all the sacred mountains, and there are temples along the way where you're supposed to light incense and pray. So it's something of a ritual that you do. But I've had very good experiences in China, but I can't speak Chinese, and that's a big drawback, and so there's only a certain penetration that I can make into China. And while I've felt that, especially in my first trip, that it was like coming home, I've realised that in some ways I can never ever, I'll always be an outsider in China, and that all of my experiences there tend to reinforce the fact that I'm Australian.